Hi, folks. Welcome to Monday. Is it Monday? Yes, it is
Aye,
Monday.
Monday.
Welcome to Monday's edition of the iWrite Radio podcast, Videocast. We've got Jimmy with us from the start.
All right.
Where are you in the queue today, Jimmy?
There's one chap in front of me at the moment.
Oh, we might get a wee half hour at you then, maybe, yeah.
Mhm.
And Stuart Lockhead. Hi, Stuart.
Hello there.
You've been busy with the papers this morning, Stuart. You've sent about 6 links.
Well, I must have had time today. After I had a busy weekend on production work, as you know.
Yeah. Well, we're going to kick off with the presser because that throws up a few interesting questions.
Yes, indeed.
So I think the standout question for me was the first one, wasn't it? The guy from the borders, whose normal stance is, why aren't you letting everybody travel everywhere because the borders has no COVID? Well, now the borders has got COVID and they're worrying about this new strain coming across the border from down south. So his question is turning every other question on its head. How are you going to protect us? He didn't actually come out and say shut the border, but he certainly seemed to be hinting in that direction. What do you think, Jimmy?
Yeah, I'd agree with you, mate. It totally not changed his tune, but it certainly changed his tone considerably. I thought it was an interesting presser, mate. The language used at times was very, very careful, particularly from the Chief Constable, which is only to be expected. Yes, they're doubling their presence. No, there's not going to be checkpoints. Well, like you said before we started, you've experienced of doing roadblocks and checkpoints, and they just every person that you stop is a problem because everybody is in their own wee bubble, and you've intruded into that bubble. So they're doing the right thing. They're going to use the Road Traffic Act. If somebody's driving up through the borders with a car full of suitcases, they will be stopped and turned around because they shouldn't be travelling. Interesting that they talk about a blanket travel ban from Boxing Day. It's an interesting choice of phrase, that one, because it's not going to be a blanket travel ban. We know there are exceptions. And if it was a blanket travel ban, in some ways it'd be a lot easier for Police Scotland, but unfortunately they can't do that. So, aye, we'll see what happens from, I think this week and next, they will get pretty good compliance for the public. And if the police play it carefully and play it right, it should work out all right.
I do think we're really depending on the police as a society to find that balance between not pissing people off by stopping every single car and by being empathetic, you know?
Yeah.
I know I've got a car full of people, but we're going to stand in the garden and wave at Granny because she's been on her own for 6 months. That's a judgment you have to make. It's not written down in your wee blue book telling you how to do it. That's a judgment you've got to make as a human being. And I think there's a huge responsibility on the police.
I think there was a huge responsibility on the likes of Michael Blackley and the boy for the Times, and both of their questions were trying to insert a pencil, pry things apart a wee bit. Will you be asking for evidence that people have a right to be travelling? What kind of journalism's that? That's really just chit stirring.
Aye, and I mean the police, if they're smart, aren't they going to, as he said about numbers? I'm not going to tell you how many panda cars I've got on the road.
They don't have panda cars anymore. They're a professional service.
It was a joke, Stuart.
I know. Look, guys, Jimmy, you referred to this evidence, and even the First Minister. It's taken her 6 months to get around to refer to an alternative international approach to handling this pandemic, as opposed to this UK 4 stop-start Captain Chaos down south telling the First Minister what she can and can't do.
What part of that is reserved? Do people not understand? She cannot shut Scottish borders. That's a UK government Oh,
Yes, and you were right about yesterday's row about that, and you were right because it was confirmed today by the First Minister herself, or was it the Chief Constable?
the Chief Constable.
No, it was absolutely confirmed. So that's fine. All I'm saying is that you know the borders quite well. I was thinking about this when he was talking about the Borders General Hospital, which is at Melrose. I mean, you're what, less than 20 miles from the border there, because you get to Kelso and it's just 4 miles down the road from Kelso.
Yeah,
And it is porous.
And how many roads can you think of that would get you over the border?
Once you get to Kelso, between Kelso and Berwick and Tweed, there's a dozen, yeah. There's not that many on the other side once you start moving west, though.
Oh, there's umpteen wee roads that nobody ever uses.
I've investigated them all the way from the Cheviot over to. I'll say no more. I had my reasons.
in a previous existence as a character upon which Breaking Bad was bloody based or something shit.
I think anywhere from the Cheviot across to Langham, there's only one road, and it takes you into Kielder. There you go.
Aye, but there's lots of ways to get off and on it. Do you know what I mean?
Anyway, it's
if
really
you stick up a roadblock, there's ways round it.
But it was interesting that I felt that the Chief Constable was there making it clear that pressing the cultural difference between policing in Scotland and the rest of the world, whatever else you might imagine policing is like. And maybe he didn't go into specific slides. Well, it's not like America and it's not like London or something. He could have said, but he didn't. But he implied that.
And I think that's what they need to maintain. I mean, Jimmy and I spoke about it before we came on air, that the last thing you want to do is start pissing people off. You really need to be empathetic and asking people for proof. If you set up a system where you need to print off a piece of paper, write your reasons down and stick it on the dashboard, the people most likely to use that are the people who need to get around the system for whatever personal reasons.
I thought the most interesting thing the Chief Constable said was when they busted the scrap metal dealer from Sunderland. And I was thinking, well.
I missed this, by the way.
Okay. Apparently, they do actually look out for evidence of people crossing the border. So when they saw the scrap metal dealer in somewhere in Scotland with a Sunderland address on the door or wherever it was, they pulled it over. Well, and the guys didn't know they weren't meant to be in Scotland. So they got a £60 fine. That's not going to crikey. I mean,
it's not going to break the bank, but
no. I mean, there's hardly a day goes by any one of us driving around in Edinburgh would consider risking a £60 fine. I mean, you do think about it. Well, let's just stop here on this double yellow line for 5 minutes, nip in here and buy a packet of fags or not.
No, the one that everybody's complaining about in Edinburgh is the bus line, because they've got them all cameraed now.
What bus line?
You're driving a mobile studio. You're allowed in bus lines.
Aye, true. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the Chief Constable, that's as politic as I've seen him. I thought he'd done no bad apart from sliding the word violence when he meant virus at one point, which came out really badly. But other than that, it was all right.
As a professional driver then, Jimmy, out in the streets, on your beat, have you noticed more policemen about? Or
not really, no. I'd imagine there's an increased presence out with town, actually. I mean, I did see when I was through into West Lothian I was about quarter of a mile actually into West Lothian for a couple of hours last week. I did see them stopping people on the way into Edinburgh as I was heading out.
Right.
Whether they were just chatting to them or not, or whether they were actually issued fines that day, I don't know.
Anything else?
Well, we discovered an awful lot. We discovered a lot about the genomic analysis that they've been doing. We discovered that the evidence had been built up over the last couple of days. It's not just come out of the mouth of Boris Johnson. This genomic analysis is a very strong British procedure.
The best genomic analysis in the world.
World-beating genomic analysis, is it?
It's not about being the best. 40% of the work is actually being done in the UK because it's been going on for years. It's not new, and it's just by accident. But obviously, they will tell in the world. It is wonderful. But
I would tend to believe it because it hasn't been shouted from the rooftops by Tory politicians.
yeah,
Yet.
not yet. And the chief medical officer, I thought there was one phrase that he used that I might have to put in the headline today. Melrose and Motherwell, it's all the same. I thought, well, it's almost like a line from the Proclaimers, isn't it? Melrose or Motherwell.
Oh, jeez. You try telling people from Melrose that they've got anything in common with people from Motherwell, you get lynched.
You beat me to it, Jimmy.
Sorry, mate.
And I have lots of friends in Melrose. I used to play down there.
Yeah, the description of the chief medical officer's description of the genomic thing is that the UK is the world's biggest database.
Well, we're world leading in one thing, eh?
Yeah.
Creating new forms of this virus. Nobody else, it's clearly nowhere else. I believe it's in Australia, but they can absolutely pinpoint that to a few Brits that arrived there.
Does anybody else have that a feeling? I don't know if I mentioned this on air, but I've got a wheelchair coming from Germany that's been delayed because of COVID, not Brexit, although Brexit might have something to do with it. But there's part of me that's kind of hoping there's a wee outbreak in France of this new one now that they've closed down the ferries and train.
You got a bit selfish now, Norrie, have you?
Well, it's just kind of, if the French don't have it, they're justified. If they don't know if they have it, they're justified. If they know they've got it, they're not justified. Kind of, I don't wish it on anybody, but there's a wee part of me that kind of seems very extreme.
Surely when it comes to the French, if it antagonises the English, they're justified, or they feel justified.
Well, did nobody think maybe this is part of putting pressure on the Brexit negotiations? We're gonna show you what could happen, and we're using this as an excuse to shut the border for a couple of days.
There is an aspect, there is that side to it. But when you look at the state of the virus running wild in southeast of England, you think about it. 20 other countries have banned.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it certainly looks like I'm having langoustine and prawns and scallops for my Christmas dinner rather than turkey, because it's there's shed loads of them that ain't going to the continent over the next few days.
Yeah, unfortunately, they might get turned bad in lorries in Kent, but
well, I'll be sending my wife out looking for cheap scallops. That's for sure.
Well, tell them to deliver to Edinburgh.
They buy cheap scallops. We know what you're going to be eating.
I'm actually prepared to give out my address if I can get some freebies out of this.
That's a dodgy path to be wandering upon, Norman.
Well, for oysters and scallops, there's not much I wouldn't do.
The First Minister also appealed to the journalists because she said, we need your assistance to inform the public, which I thought was quite good of her, because she's using what she's supposed to be strong at. She is a very good communicator. Only Jason Leitch beats her for that. Shouldn't have brought his name up, but do you think his name might come up in the awards?
Oh, I think there's a fair chance. Well, Jimmy.
No, I was just going to say he's one of these certainly in the running for shiniest ball bag of the year. It's like, remember Bob Monkhouse? Billy Connolly done a routine about the shiny people like Bob Monkhouse and Des O'Connor. Sorry, but Jason's one of them shiny people. He must polish that turd for all morning when he knows he's coming on camera.
Now, the headline in the Sun will obviously be about a hairbrush, because I'm not quite sure who was getting the hairbrush, but whatever. The fact that Nicola mentioned that when she was asked about a Christmas present, was it a Christmas present for herself or was it a Christmas present for Boris? Because Boris apparently said that he was sending 100,000 tons of fish to Nicola for Christmas. So if Nicola said, well, a hairbrush was her answer. If that's a hairbrush for Boris, that'll be the headline tomorrow.
Is he sending fish that's no getting to the continent back to Scotland?
No, it's just more quota.
Yeah, I know what he means, but
it's unfortunate for him that he mentioned 100,000 fish, and now we've got hundreds of thousands of shellfish sitting in wagons in Kent going off.
Yeah, that could well backfire on him, although I can't see the sun doing the backfiring. Oh, did anybody see the tweet from Leitch of the Herald, or as was of the Herald? I think he's no longer on the staff there, claiming that the Scottish Sun was a supporter of the SNP.
They did once support. Did they not support
Salmond.
independence at the referendum? Just
No, but
about 3 days.
They supported the SNP in the 2015 election and the 2011 election. Both times it was pretty clear that the SNP were going to win, and it was clearly just murder backing the winner, as he usually does.
Aye. I seem to remember doing a cartoon about that many years ago. Okay, Jimmy, what caught your eye in the papers and blogs today?
Well, I was quite sorry about that, Chuck. I was most annoyed by Kevin McKenna's donning of his hair shirt and beating himself with his sillis. Presumably he's been a bad boy and hasn't been to church of late, and he needed to get the priest off his back, because his column this morning in the Herald was basically calling for Scotland to be run with a more Christian attitude. But there was one paragraph in particular that bugged me, where he said that the politicians in Scotland and the health bureaucracy in Scotland had connived to sacrifice the elderly during this pandemic. I think that's a disgusting accusation to make. I think the Herald should be ashamed of themselves for publishing it, and the disclaimer that they put at the bottom of each article doesn't come close to absolving them of responsibility for publishing an accusation like that. Frankly, if I was the Scottish Parliament, I would have his credentials. He wouldn't be getting anywhere near anyone in the Parliament again. I mean, seriously, he's effectively saying that they deliberately killed off the elderly.
The whiff I got off it was somebody close to him had died.
That's just what I was thinking. Somebody close to him must have died, I think.
But I think it was way over the top. I agree with Jimmy.
It's totally unprofessional, mate. Totally. And as I say, the whole religious thing, you can have got no time for the organised religions. I'm delighted that Scotland's effectively a secular country these days, but in all churches, but particularly the big two that used to bear some nasty influence on how this country was run, certainly in the 20th century, they've got virtually no influence now. And I'm delighted about that.
He does every now and again. He does wear his Catholicism on his sleeve.
Mm-hmm.
Well, all Catholics do.
I think it's just a guilt thing, mate. They get guilt inculcated. They get guilt driven into them from a very, very young age, and I think it kicks in now and again.
But on the other hand, the thing about, I mean, because Catholics have all been a big part of my life, even though I was Church of Scotland. But they on the other hand, yes, they get guilt driven into them, but they also get, what's the word on a Sunday when they go to church? They get
absolution.
Absolution. So you can be a bad boy all week, and on Sunday you get absolution, and Monday you're all fresh and clean again. You don't get that as a Protestant.
No, we wear our guilt like a hair shirt for our entire life, rather than just from week to week.
Carry it to the grave.
I had a very close friend whose grandfather had paid for an indulgence, and he proudly wandered around saying, "Well, I'll never go to purgatory because I was mentioned in this indulgence that grandchildren were included."
I thought the only people that were taking indulgences were the clergy back then.
go straight to heaven.
Nasty. Catholicism kind of confuses me because on the surface, it looks like good socialists could buy into it.
Aye,
Oh,
absolutely.
you shouldn't.
You know?
Oh, now you've got me. Now
Well, wait a minute. And yet, every time they're called upon to act like good socialists, they end up supporting the fascists.
Well, there you go. But the idea, that's what I wanted to say about the Kevin McKenna article, Jimmy. Oh, it oozes the supposed higher morality of being a Christian.
Yeah.
It's like you've got to be a Christian to be moral. Get to. And it promotes exceptionalism. Think about it. I'm a Christian, therefore I'm better than you.
Well, further to my rant, what I should have added at the end of that was the fact that the churches don't have the influence they used to have has been offset by the fact, or it's noticeable that the morality of Scotland hasn't got much worse, although their influence has waned. You know what I mean? We're not at the gates of Hades waiting for Beelzebub to invite us in for a lifelong party. Scotland hasn't gone to hell in a hurly barry as they insisted it would if we started ignoring them and living our lives for ourselves a wee bit.
I must admit, I'm definitely a wee free man.
You're a wee man, but I'm not so sure about the wee free bit.
They drinking and dancing.
Surprisingly enough,
but you're having a Turkish bath, but it used to be the world's worst for the drinking and the dancing.
But the wee frees are all right. But one thing, but the Plymouth Brethren or the close brethren, even worse. It's surprising that anybody outside them knows much about them, but I do.
Norrie, as a professional DFP, you done a lot of drinking and dancing back in the day, sir.
Well, it was part of my job, Jimmy.
And that's a damn fine excuse, and you're sticking to it, eh?
Sorry, Stuart.
You need to take that into consideration when you start thinking about the politics of the northeast fishermen and northeast of Scotland fishermen. Close brethren. It's.
Is this the crowd that had the two big houses in Musselburgh?
They are very big in business, and they every now and again the brethren get exposed as being very dodgy in various lines of business. Don't ask me to be particular, but they split up. If you stop being they can't share meals. You can't share meals with other non-believers of their cult. Anyway,
they make masons without the aprons.
And you need to think. It's never mentioned when you read about all these weird positions that these northeast fishermen take.
Right, I just came across something about there being a falling out amongst some culty sounding religious group in Musselburgh, and they split and they kind of didn't speak to each other, and it was all a bit weird. It's like kept within families. It's not promoted, I don't think, in any way. It sounded weird. Anyway, I know nothing about it. I will not cast aspersions.
The best known sect of the Brethren is called the Plymouth Brethren for some reason or other. Maybe that's got something to do with the Plymouth evangelists going to founding New England.
Yeah, I read something there last year. I think it was probably earlier this year, given how things seem to have dragged on so. But I'm pretty sure there's a couple of serving cabinet ministers that have some pretty close links to the Plymouth Brethren. Pretty sure Matt Hancock was amongst them.
Mr. Gove and his fishing connections, do you think?
I just think Mr. Gove's no human. I genuinely think he's an alien wearing a human suit.
I cannot say Gove now without adding on in my head Slithy Toad. I can't. It's automatic for me now.
I think he's got the best spitting image puppet of the new generation.
It just looks like him.
No, but that whole chin and nose thing made to look like a sack and a walloper. It's outstanding.
That's got to be a category for our awards. Which spitting image puppet is getting an award?
Okay, Stuart, pick one. It's your turn.
We've still got the continuing story of the devolution program announcement plan pile of poo that Keir Starmer's yet to announce today. It's been trailed all weekend.
Do we have a time for this speech?
Today?
That's it.
He's he's not going to give you a time, mate, because the minute he gives you a time, Boris or Matt Hancock will go on Sky News or BBC to make an announcement, and all the cameras go off Keir.
Well, he's going to, I mean, if Scotland's a big part of it, she's got a Cobra meeting, Nicola Sturgeon, and a resilience committee meeting.
Or shorthand Scottish Cobra.
Yeah.
Thing. It's fascinating that the bits that have been trailed by his Starmer's aides, there's nothing new at all. Here's a piece from what Kathleen Nutt for this National said. Starmer's speech will set out how the next phase of devolution can build a more democratic and socially just Scotland in a modern United Kingdom. Keir, that has been tried. There ain't nobody else in Britain apart from you and Richard Leonard that believe that anymore.
Can I rephrase what that really means? What that really means is, because we now have no power in the Scottish Parliament, we want to devolve power down to the councils where we still have a wee bit power.
Oh, but even more important from his point of view is he needs Scottish MPs because he's lost at this natural homeland in the north of England where he can collect them English MPs.
I'll give you the headline that they'll know, right? Sir Keir of Camden's fantasy federalism. The fact is, he can't deliver more democracy within his own party. He's made the Labour Party less democratic than it was when he became leader. And he's now offering us more federal democracy for the United Kingdom. Try and get your own house in order. In fact, try and find the key for the front door to your own house. Because right now, all he's doing is making an essay.
Yeah. Starmer is expected to say, and it's all speculation, he'll change his speech when he sees all the reaction, of course. Our nations are bound by our history, values, and our identity. Our families live across borders. Our businesses operate across borders. We're interconnected and we're interdependent. Yes, so what? You can have an international border and still be all that.
I actually think that it is almost essential now for the Labour Party to go down this road, because it's all they can offer the north of England.
Oh, they're not. Oh God!
It actually sounds like
the Red Wall and the north of England.
It sounds like a pound shop version of a Better Together pamphlet for 2014. Though, all this nonsense about families across borders. They'll be telling us next we can't have an divisive referendum because it divides families. Many times have we heard that line since 2014?
Well, I think politically, it's actually a play to win back Labour votes in England.
Guys, sorry.
Okay.
Cheers, you mate. Thanks for being with us.
Yeah, but it's quite good that we gets you saying. Look, think of what do we also discover in connection with this new devolution plan, which is clearly driven by Gordon Brown. It's just got his inky fingers all over it, hasn't it? And there's even a guy in Northern Ireland that set up a new organisation called NIIN, Northern Ireland in UK. It's a play on words, but it's called UK Unity or something. And the guy was an Ulster unionist, and he's claiming now to be less
unionist,
rabid. And he's coming out with all this Northern Ireland's changed. There's all this the social cultural changes. They're thinking about the Catholic Church isn't so strict. All these aspects, the accepting of same-sex marriages and these sort of things. He's referencing that, but the timing coming out today that it's all about we need a new devolution for the United Kingdom. Why is he announcing this today unless he's linked up to Keir Starmer and Gordon Brown?
The same. Well, I mean, he'll get headlines because of Starmer's speech if he's going for federalism. That will give them the excuse to say there's an outfit in Northern Ireland thinking the same way. I mean, to me, it's that step to try and prevent A border poll in Northern Ireland, and B, an independence referendum in Scotland. They have nowhere else to go. They can't point to anything and say, this is why the union is a benefit to you, because everything you're looking at the moment is basically driven by incompetence. Brexit, the COVID thing, there's been nothing in recent history to make you think the union is a plus. And all they've got is federalism.
I mean, the exceptionalism was oozing out of the so-called Keir Starmer's words. That's the trouble. We can slag him off and then he won't say these words because they've been trailed all over the press for days.
Well,
But,
I mean, they've been trailed. I mean, it's not even a leak. This is information handed out to the papers.
Oh yeah, it's been handed out, but it can still change. And as I say, yesterday I posted a special annex to our blog, our videocast podcast yesterday, and in it there's a 13-minute interview with Canon Kenyon Wright and the history of the both the Labour Party and the Lib Dem Party in Scotland with relative to devolution is very interesting. And we now have a very unionist Labour Party in Scotland, which wasn't very unionist 30 years ago.
Well, I think the mistake that was made by the Labour Party,
they've made.
Yeah, the mistake they made was going out all out unionism. They didn't build a platform. Well, they didn't build a platform. It was a last minute get out clause federalism. And, it's not party policy. It'll become party policy, but it's not yet. And it's a thunderously stupid thing to do.
We can see the plan, especially with this new launch in Northern Ireland, because the material that's already been released, that they're talking about, the worries. They're worried about Scotland leaving the union. Okay, now here's a reason to raise federalism again, even though it's a complete no-no because England is so big. There is no federal state in the world where one of the partners is as big as England compared to the other three.
Well, I mean, for me, it's really simple. It's about trust. And if they don't put a clause into any agreement on federalism that states that Scotland can, at any time it wishes, hold an independence referendum, I don't trust them. It's that simple. If there is not an official get-out clause for Scotland, it's just another excuse to do what they want and call it what they want.
That's still going to be devolution, and it will still mean that Westminster is sovereign. Even that clause can be overruled.
Exactly. But if they don't have the courage to argue for and put it in there, they get no truck from me at all. They can away and boil their heads, because they'll do.
Away and boil your head.
Well, they'll do what history has taught us. They always do. I mean, the Tory party at the minute is dismantling devolution. Now, Alan, God, I've forgotten his second name, the playwright, Alan Bissett, has a 5-minute, 6-minute speech where he outlines what will happen if we don't vote for independence in 2014. And he is right. It's taken a bit longer for them to start dismantling the devolution settlement, but that's what they're doing.
Well, David Cameron didn't even wait for a week before he started dismantling power in Scotland.
The reality is David Cameron's evil English votes for English laws didn't touch devolution. It didn't. It just took away voting powers for MPs at Westminster. Well, that's all that happened. Voting powers that, incidentally, they didn't use. Well, the SNP, as a matter of policy, didn't vote on only English issues.
Right. It was the appearance of him standing there on the steps of 10 Downing Street and saying, "We're going ahead with these English."
No, it was, "We've won, and here's what I can do to prove we've won."
There you go.
Yeah,
Stick
I
it.
don't disagree with you. But this internal market bill is a genuine out and out attack on the devolution settlement.
All we're waiting for is royal assent. And
Exactly.
I believe that could come over the Christmas period. And once that's done, the power is gone.
Yep.
The devolved power is gone.
And as I say, until Keir Starmer comes up with something that basically says, if he comes up with a plan that says, and we're so confident in this plan, we're going to give you a way out if we don't make it work.
And the other thing about this Keir Starmer stuff that really annoys me is that the pride in the social democratic values, the values of Britain. It's the idea that Britain is this beacon in the world when it's clearly not. When it's been run by a bunch of corrupt gangsters. Honestly, do people in London really believe this? Even socialists?
Well,
He's not a
pretty,
socialist.
they're pretty blinkered if they do. I mean, it's a fight for the status quo, which I find strange in of itself, because I can't see the Labour Party winning in this particular status quo. I cannot see them getting back into power. I mean, they're boasting about him now being on level pegging with the Tories. The Tories this must be the worst government we've seen, certainly in my lifetime.
This is which by definition, this makes it the worst opposition in my lifetime.
Well, and people just don't trust the Labour Party. And I would suggest with good reason. And when Brexit comes along and starts smashing the income of the people in the red wall who voted Tory in Brexit, who were Labour supporters traditionally, I have no idea what's going to happen. They're not going to blame themselves.
They'll get angry, and that is dangerous, because then they'll turn to fascism.
Well, will they double down on the Tories?
You can bet who'll be there
or go back to the Labour Party.
Nigel Farage will be there. Aaron Banks, Steve Bannon's money will be there.
Well, I think the Labour Party need another leg. It has to be simpler than federalism. They need another National Health Service moment to get back. I don't think they're coming back ever. And when the Boundary Commission's finished, there'll be even less chance of them getting the seats they need to rule. Which is why I don't understand why the Conservatives don't just give Scotland its referendum. Because without Scotland, the Labour Party have no chance ever of getting in power.
You know, there are other aspects. Their self-belief, their self-importance, their permanent position on the Security Council. The fact that Scotland does not cost them money, but is a cash cow.
Well, that'll all come out in the next independence referendum,
well,
which I am absolutely certain will happen in 2021.
Are you? Is that your prediction?
Yeah, I think it's going to happen, not this year, next year.
Circumstances could add up, of course. But, you know,
sorry, not 2021, 2022.
Oh, 2022, okay. I was wondering, you thought you were being a bit brave saying next year, because we're nearly at next year.
Won't happen next year, but it'll happen in 2022.
It was interesting when the First Minister was asked about if things get much worse, about the pandemic, which is a possibility, which is in a lot of people's minds today. And one of the journalists asked, would there be any chance of the May elections being postponed?
And she said, no.
She didn't say never, no chance, but she said, and don't forget there's a bill, apparently it could be signed off this week, because Holyrood are back in again tomorrow. This bill, which is to cope with the possibility of the pandemic getting worse, and it includes measures to handle to handle the effects on this election. She didn't say it wouldn't.
Well, I mean, it would be difficult actually for her to say never, I suppose, because one of her consistent lines is, "You can't foretell the future." Fair enough. Anyway,
Politicians spend a lot of time trying to.
I think that's us just about. Well, we
Well, can I
haven't
just say-
anywhere near exhausted everything, have we?
No,
Sorry,
Can
Stuart.
I just say a quick word about, there's a nice article I missed yesterday in the Sunday National by Stuart Cosgrove, a man who's I got a great deal of time for. And he writes a nice piece about JohnLe Carre, who died last week. And it's two writers, basically, who I've admired over the years, are creatives. Le Carre was fascinated by the end of this. It's relevant to what we talked about.
Yeah, right. Get on with it.
Le Carre was fascinated by the end of empire, by the emotional debris it left behind, and by the folly of the misplaced superiority complex that it still festers in the minds of many today. He despised Brexit and loathed the people who'd been the architects of its deceitful promise. And you know what? He was planning to move to Dublin, but he died before he could get there.
I have to say, Stuart Cosgrove is getting better. It was a wonderfully written article, and brought out lots of things apart from the quality of Le Carre's writing. I was well impressed on both the craftsmanship level of the article and the content.
Well, that's good to hear. I like the fact that you've got to bear in mind, Stuart Cosgrove had a very important position commissioning a lot of TV programs for Channel 4. That was a job to be proud of in your CV. He connects very well with the ordinary public in Scotland because of his football punditry. And he goes beyond football punditry because he runs the riskiest, him and Tam Cowan broadcast the riskiest radio show, TV show in Scotland.
Risque, apart from not
it's
much
both.
risk.
It's both. They're live and they outrageous things they get away with.
Well, it was a quality piece of writing. It reminded me of Peter Bell, late of the Herald, who has passed away.
Yeah, Peter Bell, Thingy Bell, though. Yeah, was it Steve Bell?
Was it not Peter? I thought it was Peter because Peter A. Bell stuck.
I know who you mean. I know who you mean. Was it Peter? Okay, it could be. Oh, he was a great writer, yeah.
Yeah, and that had a whiff of that man who was a fantastic writer. No, I thoroughly enjoyed it, and it brought life into what is quite difficult when you write an obituary for a man of Le Carre's standing.
Well, I mean, I have a great love for England. It's just to watch. I feel like Le Carre. It's good, you know. When I first went to England, I was, as a young man on my own, I was totally accepted wonderfully by people, complete strangers in London, put me up for a week. Complete strangers in the village of Bramley in Surrey. They took me in, and I went to a local wedding, and I was just traveling through, homeless. No, I really fell in love with it, but it's totally, all that's gone.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that. It's not very apparent in the people that run England, I don't think, but I think the people of England are as warm as they ever were.
Hey ho.
Okay, we'll call it a day at that.
Oh, here, the headline for tomorrow's paper will be a hairbrush for Boris, okay?
Okay. We didn't get on to our awards for this year. We'll try and do it tomorrow. Thanks, Jimmy, wherever you are. Thank you, Stuart, for being.
Okay.
I'm Norrie Stewart. Thanks for listening, folks. And we'll catch you all tomorrow. Cheers for now.